that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell, and Empty Chair.
And here's Tom Fennell, and here's Empty Chair.
Empty Chair is our guest
We
today.
are preparing for a guest later on who will show up when he shows up.
That's one of the nice things about having guests who show up when they show up is they always show up at exactly the time you expect them. Anyway,
one of the things I wanted to mention is due to popular demand, I have taken the liberty of sizing up some of the pictures that I put up here.
Aha, yes.
So that you can see them.
So you can see them.
You know,
I
so
hope
if it's
people
just a
appreciate
logo,
seeing
I haven't blown it up. But
Yeah.
if it's an interesting picture, it'll fill a full screen. It might be a little bit more fun to watch.
Yeah. So we do news from the week preceding relating to energy and climate change, and I think what we should do is just jump right in.
Well, you start talking. And
I start talking while you're playing with a mouse, right?
Yeah, I wanted to get, that's what I wanted to get up there.
All right, starting on Thursday, May 28th, Citibank lowered its long-run thermal coal forecast by 11%, citing increasing competition from natural gas and renewables and weak Chinese demand. They told clients, global thermal coal demand is suffering from increasing environmental pressure and competition from natural gas and renewable energy. That's from Plaid.
What we're seeing here is more of the economic sector being aware of this and telling their clients, you know, that, hey, maybe fossil fuel energy isn't such a good investment anymore.
Yeah, and we've been seeing that trend developing pretty constantly over the past the whole time we've been doing this.
It started heavily with Bloomberg.
Yeah.
And he's still doing it, but
sure is.
Now we got Citibank, we've got other Wall Street firms talking about
Citibank has been kind of on the bandwagon for a while. We've seen things about Citibank before.
But it's interesting now that people are talking about this. They're not saying it's a hoax, it's a hoax, it's a hoax.
Well, we'll see more of that, won't we?
Well, there's going to be more of that.
and in this broadcast, we will see more of that. Okay, that was the only item that I had from Thursday, May 28th. So we're going to Friday, May 29th, and we got a report from CNN. This relates to well, I'll just read it. Highest temperature recorded on Wednesday reached 116.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 47 degrees Celsius, in the eastern Indian states. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. No, I can't do it. Yeah, right. And Odisha. More than 1,400 have died in the heat wave. Climate change is likely the factor, according to research scientists with NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. And since this news item appeared, that heat wave has appeared in the news every day, and every day the death toll has gone up, and at the time I'm speaking, it's already upwards of 2,340.
It's pretty serious.
It's pretty
there.
serious.
It's pretty serious.
Yeah.
Here's some pictures there of hot Indians, basically.
Yes.
I didn't blow them up all the way because they're not that much to see, but they're hot. And the two lower pictures on the right shows people hiding from the sun, just trying to stay cool by getting out of the sun. One guy's laying under his truck. He's not dead, he's just sleeping.
Which is about as much energy as you want to exert.
The next thing I've got coming up on this same slide is a map of India.
Oh, yeah.
And the one on the left shows basically what the heat, they call it the heat stress, what is happening today. And the one on the right is what they're projecting. The only thing is, I couldn't find in the article how far in the future they're projecting, but I don't think it's very far.
That heat is going right up into the mountains in the north.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That's you know, the north is where people.
It's not anywhere near as bad because it's higher elevations, but it's still warm.
Okay.
Now there's a takeaway here. Okay, when will the heat wave end?
We don't know.
Well, we really don't know, but it's possible that a monsoon could hit by the end of the week and bring relief. Maybe. On Wednesday night, a light shower in Hyderabad brought some relief to millions who had been praying for rain. In the meantime, water camps are open and commuters are doing their best to survive. Water camps, this is the one on the left is a picture of a water camp. Okay. People are going there to get water.
Yeah.
You know, they call it a water camp, but it's just a dispensary for water.
Wow.
The public water drinking systems aren't enough for the heat wave.
Right. Okay, we have an item from Vermont Public Radio. TDI New England wants to build a 1,000-megawatt power line under Lake Champlain.
Well, here's a good picture of Lake Champlain.
Yeah, there it is.
This is a very interesting thing, and we've talked about it before. The power is coming through Vermont, but basically it's not for Vermont. We don't use enough. It's for southern New England, principally Massachusetts and Connecticut.
This is actually more, I think, more power than Vermont normally uses.
Oh, absolutely.
If that power were for Vermont, it would be in excess of what we usually use.
Yeah, no, this is basically for the people of downcountry. And it's one of two projects. There's another one going in the New York side of Lake Champlain.
Right.
Now, none of these things have gotten full approval yet, so we don't know that they'll happen, but they're moving along in both states.
It's interesting, though, that what they're choosing to do here is to run under the lake instead of running through the countryside.
Instead of running high lines, they're running under the lake.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting, they're not just going to lay these on the bottom. They're trenching the lake. These are going to be buried.
They're going to be buried on the bottom of the lake. They have a whole bunch of people who dig really well.
Wearing scuba gear.
I don't know how they trench them under the lake, but
well, that's all done by machinery. But
it's done by machine.
And there's a logic behind that. They don't want these cables to be interfered with by people's anchors, which would be a very expensive proposition.
Yes, it would be if you.
It'd be scary. Probably not very dangerous, but scary as hell. Hey, Dad, man. What's that? Oh, that's a 150,000-volt power cable. Oh, okay.
Okay. From Triangle Business Journal, we have this. 3 of the world's largest tech companies, Apple, Facebook, and Google, have called on the North Carolina General Assembly to avoid making changes to the state's renewable energy policies. They said the policies were important parts of the reasons they had chose to invest in the state.
And for those that are interested, there is the North Carolina Assembly.
By golly. And there's not a cigar in sight.
Isn't that interesting?
This is the non-smoke-filled front room. Okay. Should we go on?
I'm just looking to see if there's anything really quick here to read.
Okay.
No, not really.
Okay.
It's just boilerplate kind of stuff.
On Saturday.
This one's interesting coming up.
Yep. On Saturday, I got this from AOL.com. Torrential downpours in Texas have flooded drought-parched lands. A heat wave has so far killed more than 1,800 people in India. Alaska, of all places, had a record 91-degree readings. A pair of top-of-the-scale typhoons hit in the Northwest Pacific. A drought is taking hold in the east, and part of the blame is climate change.
Yeah.
Part of the blame.
Part of it.
You know, one of my axioms about
weather... We're not building enough reservoirs either.
I think that's true. And that, by the way, for those who don't know, refers to a statement that the drought in California was brought on by environmentalists who didn't want reservoirs built. Which, if the rain don't fall, you can't catch it.
There's a couple of pictures up there of the San Jacinto River in Kingswood, Texas.
Wow.
Now, that first one is a house that obviously was built in a floodplain, and they built it up on piers, and boy, are they happy they did.
I would suppose.
And the other one is overflow of the river.
Yeah.
This is normally not much more than a stream.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost a dry riverbed. And
that first picture reminds me of that picture that we had at in our slideshow on microgrids of the couple who were looking at their house where the
but that house was destroyed.
Yes,
this one isn't.
Hurricane Sandy had torn away the ground floor of the house, leaving the enough structure left that the second floor was up in the air. But this one was built that way on purpose.
Well, a Rutgers University scientist named Jennifer Francis remarks, "Mother Nature keeps throwing us crazy stuff. It's just been one thing after another. The jet stream is in a rut, not moving nasty weather along. The high-speed, constantly shifting river of air 30,000 feet above Earth normally guides storms around the globe, but sometimes it splits and comes back to gather somewhere else. A stuck jet stream with a bit of a split explains the extremes in Texas, India, Alaska, and the U.S. East, but not the typhoons."
But not the typhoons.
But we're not getting typhoons.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you know, that one of the axioms that I have on weather is the weather is always weird. But
in this case, you're right on the money.
It's getting weirder. That's the problem. Okay. Environmental Working Group gave us this. Calculations based on the EPA's estimate of corn ethanol emissions show that last year's production and use of 14 billion gallons of corn ethanol resulted in 27 million tons more carbon emissions than if Americans had used straight gasoline. That's worse than the projected emissions from the Keystone XL pipeline.
Well, the text here just says it. Extracting tar sands and turning them into oil is more energy intensive than traditional drilling for petroleum. Well, yeah, that's a duh. We're aware of that.
Yep.
But what else is it doing to us? Now, there's a picture of the carbon intensity of ethanol versus tar sand oil.
And this is the ethanol. Part of the purpose of the ethanol is to get us off gasoline.
Yeah.
And it's using...
It isn't working.
It isn't working. It's actually making things worse instead of better.
Well, if you adopt a conspiratorial point of view, the purpose of this is to funnel money into the large agricultural companies like Archer.
I don't think you have to go to a conspiratorial point of view to see that. I mean, the money is going to the groups that are lobbying Congress.
Bingo. Bingo. Yeah,
and they're doing it right in front of everybody.
Now, you've talked about this before, your own experience using ethanol gasoline in your car.
Yeah, you know, I had a Prius. I was very conscious of the mileage I was getting. In fact, I wrote an article that appeared in Home Power magazine on how to get great gas mileage. And what I found was that when the gasoline was no longer available and had been completely replaced with corn ethanol, my gas mileage went down. And 10% corn ethanol meant a 10% decline in gas mileage. And that is not helpful.
So you had a Prius, so that's got like a readout on the dash. So
it's a readout on the dash, yeah.
You could see real time what was happening.
I could see what was happening real time, that's right. And I can tell you, you know, my experience with the Prius was such that I was able to drive that car to get mileage that exceeded the EPA projected.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can.
Well, there was a complaint at the time that people were unable to do it, that the EPA standard was, or the EPA emissions mileage was unrealistic. But I was able, you know, they said you can expect to get about 48, I think it was, miles per gallon, 50 miles per gallon when you're on a superhighway. I drove from here to Atlanta and back and got an average of 55 miles per gallon.
For a long trip.
That's in a 2001 Prius, the original Prius. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Truckers been doing this for years, you know. They call it the Georgia overdrive. They put it in neutral when they're going downhill.
Oh yes, Well, I didn't do that because you can actually make electricity going downhill in one of those things.
Yeah, with a Prius you can.
Yeah.
Right. A little bit more advanced than a Georgia overdrive.
Yeah. Okay. Our next item comes from The Hindu, and unsurprisingly, that comes from India. The Indian state of Karnataka, which lies in the country's southwest,
it's on the map up there.
It's on the map, is embarking on setting up a mega solar power park said to be the world's biggest. The park, with a capacity of 2,000 megawatts, will come up on 10,000 acres of land in a parched area. The site was chosen for its sunlight and low land use.
Well, the map up there is not of this particular solar park because it isn't built yet.
Yes, you're saying.
But it's built. It's in India.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar one, which right now I believe is the largest in the world.
Okay.
So it's going to look very much like that one.
It looks like a parking lot.
Except those aren't cars, they're solar panels.
That's right. Okay, WebWire. Toshiba Corporation received an order to supply a large-scale battery energy storage system for Tohoku Electric Power Company's Minami Soma substation project.
Now, there's an artist rendition of what that battery is going to look like.
This is a 40 megawatt.
This is a very huge thing.
Yeah, 40 megawatt hour lithium-ion system.
You want to get some idea of scale. Most of these batteries are about 8 feet tall.
Okay.
So you get some idea of scale.
They're not D-cells.
No, nor are they a very large collection of D-cells.
Yeah, these are very big lithium-ion batteries.
But they're resurrecting a lot of old technology. They're developing a lot of new technology because all of a sudden there's a vast demand for storage that never existed before.
Right, and one company after another has jumped into this market.
Yeah,
and just. You know, they were already making these batteries, but Tesla, you know, Elon Musk makes an announcement of the Tesla battery, and all of a sudden, Toshiba is involved, BMW is involved. It's, you know,
Well, he's making it easy for them to do it because he's giving them the patents.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
which is a radical departure, really.
Yeah, they actually, you know, he's done that. It is a radical departure. He did that with a car.
Yeah.
And but there are other companies now that are also doing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, we're going to touch on that.
We will touch on it. Okay, Sunday, May 31st. Large swaths of green pasture along Massachusetts highways are being transformed into solar power fields that the state transportation officials say could save taxpayers $15 million over the next 20 years. 10 sites on Route 3 and the Mass Pike have been selected for the first phase of the project. This is from the Boston Herald.
There's a couple of pictures. That's the Mass Pike.
Yep.
I don't know where those solar panels are. Boy, I had a heck of a hard time with this website.
Oh, really?
It wouldn't let me copy anything. Every time I tried to copy something, it shifted to another website that had nothing to do with any of this.
I have that same experience.
It was very frustrating.
I have that same experience.
It took me about an hour to get this far. These are screenshots.
I used when I put this up on the blog, and I should mention the name, geoharvey.wordpress.com, and it also went on the Green Energy Times blog. The way I got a shot of the Mass Pike was to avoid that one altogether and go to Wikimedia Commons and pick up a shot of the Mass Pike, which looks exactly like this one.
Yeah.
It might be, but the picture that I got looks a lot like that. I don't think it is that, but it's very, very similar.
The Mass Pike looks like the Mass Pike, you know.
Well, you know, there are places where you got hills, and there are places where you got, you know, pictures of the skyline of Boston. And nonetheless, there it is. And one of the things that struck me about this, when I was in 7th grade, and you can tell by the color of my beard that was
a while ago.
A while ago. I remember hearing that the area of the United States that was covered by asphalt was approximately equal to the area of the state of Louisiana.
Wow, I would have thought it was that much. I'd have said Rhode Island or Massachusetts.
I know that there's a lot of asphalt down there.
Yeah.
And if you think about roads and you think about the idea that almost any road has got some kind of potential for putting up a solar power site, and these panels are just, you know, we've seen pictures of this in various places where there's a bike lane in the middle of a road which is covered with solar panels. I know that there are roads in Massachusetts already that have solar panels alongside them in the areas that had been grass.
Well, there's a lot of places in Europe where the breakdown lane, if you want to call it that, is covered with solar panels.
Yeah, yeah.
On both sides. You
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So this is something's coming. And we haven't even mentioned parking lots.
Parking lots
going to be a big area for solar.
Sidewalks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places in towns, in the countryside, alongside roads, on medians. There's a lot of area. It would be interesting to sit down and calculate how much. But we don't have time for that right now. We'll go on to Summit County Citizens' Voice. Cutting U.S. greenhouse gas emissions to a target level announced by the Obama administration won't require huge policy changes, according to a new report from the World Resources Institute. Reducing carbon emissions by 26 to 28% in the next 10 years can be achieved under existing policies and laws. And by the way, in many states, it's just going to be achieved by the standards that the states have already adopted.
Yeah, absolutely. And what they're saying here, this is right from the website. Leadership is in the doing, not just the pledging.
Yes.
Don't say I'm going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
You know? And they are.
In that graph, is the Republican side the one that's blue and the Democrat side the one that's red?
This is by year.
Aha,
okay. So it's global temperature, that's the black line.
Okay.
And the black line is carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide.
The blue lines and the red lines are global temperature.
And the
blue line is below their median, which is about 57.60 degrees.
Yeah. There was
in Fahrenheit. That's a global temperature. I guess that's been the average global temperature.
Right.
And so it's an interesting map because everything over on the right.
Climate change mysteriously stopped in the last 15 years.
Yeah, right.
Is just a fabrication. It's so bizarre that people would believe.
Well, this map goes back to 1880.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, we should get going into the next one. Yeah. PRI says in a new book, noted environmentalist Lester Brown says that the shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy will happen much faster than expected. I think we're going to see a half-century of change compressed into the next decade, he says, and this is partly because the market is beginning to drive this transition. And you know what? I think he's been listening to us.
Yeah, there's a picture of solar panels. They're just solar panels, but they did come from the website.
Yeah.
And just to make it interesting, they put some contrails in the...
How did they do that? Did they pay somebody to go up and make contrails?
No, it was an artist rendition, I'm sure.
I see, okay.
Actually, I'm sure they're just playing.
They have an artist who is trying to get those conspiracy theorists among us.
Getting them all going. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I think there's a takeaway here. Let me pull it up.
Yeah.
The fossil fuel industries know that the transition to renewables could, in a sense, be the end for them, according to Lester Brown.
Yes.
So some utilities are trying to forestall the transition away from coal by looking for ways to put a tax on or charge on solar panels. And they're doing that.
We will have comments on this in a few minutes.
The big oil companies are in a similar fix.
Oh, boy.
Brown points out. For the last century, they have had an ever-growing market for oil, but now they are suddenly watching that market shrink.
In other words, they've gone into a recession.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an industry-wide recession. It happens, but for the oil industry to have that happen when the rest of the economy is not in that bad shape, their recession is very, very serious, and they've got to deal with it.
Well, yeah, but dealing with it means stranded assets. What are they going to do?
Sure does.
They have bought all this oil, and they are
very big question.
Looking at it being worth less than they had anticipated.
Right, and which, by the way, explains why the Saudis have been pumping oil as fast as they can, even though the price is low. Which explains why the price is low, because I
think they want to get rid of it while they have it.
They've said so.
Yeah.
They have said so.
It's also interesting in Saudi Arabia because when they no longer have oil, they're still going to have an awful lot of desert to put solar panels in.
And
they
wind
always have a wind.
Yeah.
And the wind is as a result of the hot weather.
I will recommend that anybody who wants to know about the Saudi desert go to satellite pictures that you can see. Google Earth is a place, and look at the area in the northwest of Saudi Arabia. And if you look at that area and you consider that's the desert that Lawrence of Arabia, you remember in Lawrence of Arabia, they're crossing this desert and they're worried about people dying and so forth because it's so dry and so terrible and it's the worst place on earth, they say. That's the desert where the Saudis have, if you look at it, you will see farms.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. If you see them from the sky, the farms are all round.
They're all round. That's right. That's what they are. You'll see these round things, and if you want to get into conspiracy theories, you can think all you want about Monsanto making money with that or something. But no, I'm sorry. This is just people making round farms. And
well, why are they round? Is because they've got a well, an oil well, and
a water well.
I mean, a water well.
Yes.
Yeah. My boss in Saudi drilled water wells. That was his chief source of income.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, they drill those wells.
We're not talking, backyard single house water wells. We're talking like municipal water wells and stuff.
Right.
Underneath the oil in Saudi Arabia, there's a huge reservoir of water.
Under the oil.
Under the oil.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of water in the world. The problem is, how do you get it? But once they've got it, they can distribute it from a central location to a field, and they can distribute. I believe they use booms.
Well, they got these great big wheels, a pipe extending out, maybe 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
And wheels on it, and it rotates around.
It goes around watering the crop.
And over in the corners, they got shade for the cows. If the cows don't want to be in the grass, they got a place to go. The corners, how would you say it? If there's a circle in the middle of a square, there's 4 corners.
There's 4 corners.
And that's where they built barns and sheds.
That's right. Okie doke. On Monday, June 1st, we have this from C News Renewables. Renewable power produced 49.9% of Spain's electricity in the 29 days of May to the preceding Friday, according to the grid operator. Yes, it is, isn't it? That was one that C News Renewables found. I just copied it. Wind power was 25% of the share, a 25% share of the total power. Hydroelectric generated 14.9%. The share of all major renewables grew in comparison to April. And of course it grew in comparison to the year before. They're getting half their power from renewables in Spain.
Spain is.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, 49.9. I'll give them half for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. We're playing horseshoes here. The next item from Renews, the 630 megawatt London Array offshore farm, wind farm, has generated 5 terawatt hours in its first 2 full years of operation. The facility in the Thames estuary is also achieved an average availability of 95% from its 175 turbines. The London Array is owned by Eon Dong Energy Masdar and Canadian pension fund La Caisse. I don't know how to pronounce French. I'm stuck. I can pronounce Welsh just fine, but not French.
It's a nice picture. I believe this is the London estuary.
Yeah.
Because it came from the website. So
yeah.
I believe it is. It's an interesting looking place. It certainly doesn't look foreboding.
No, it doesn't. Okay. Should we move on?
Moving right along.
This next item, I think, is by far the most important item of the week. And it may turn out to be the most important item of the year.
This is important, yep.
BP, Shell, and 4 other major oil energy companies who have written the UN calling for a global price on carbon to help them accelerate deployment of low-emission technologies. The letter outlines the company's desire for a dialogue with the UN and governments about a scheme to put a price on emissions. Nice picture, Tom.
Yeah, it's a oil well, oil drilling in the Arctic. It's not a well yet. They're drilling.
They're drilling, and there's another one in the background there that just looks like a little black blob on the screen.
I think you're right. I think that's what it is. Yep.
This is really significant. 3 of these companies, you know, we talk about big oil, and big oil is big. You know, if you look it up, you'll find that there are 5 companies that constitute big oil.
They're big.
They're big. BP, Shell, Total, ExxonMobil, and Chevron are the 5 companies. And those 5 companies have a revenue, gross revenue, of about $1.6 trillion, as I recall. It might be 1.5, but it's about $1.5 trillion.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And 3 of those companies, BP, Shell, and Total, have signed this letter, along with 3 other companies that are not included in what people call big oil, but they're big nonetheless. Big oil is a kind of a historical thing. There were 7 oil companies that were involved in basically dominated the
basically
energy.
A cartel.
Yeah, it was a cartel, basically.
The 7 Sisters.
The 7 Sisters. They dominated the oil markets from the 1940s until the 1970s. 2 of them, there were 2 sets of them that merged, which is why there's 5 of them now. There are other companies that are as big as BP, Shell, or Total. The Chinese oil company, I believe, is one, and there are 21 oil companies that have incomes, gross revenues that exceed $100 billion, and this group of 6, their revenues are about a quarter of that total. And what this means is that 60% of the big oil companies, and you have to bear in mind that that's just a title, but about 25% of the actual biggest oil companies have signed on to an initiative to get into a conversation with the United Nations and with the countries of the earth, trying to figure out what we're going to do about carbon emissions and climate change, and that's
big news.
That's
big news. I'd say they're looking at what's going on, and they say we better get on a bandwagon here before it comes around and bites us.
Now, by contrast, the CEO of ExxonMobil stood up and said, well, the science isn't in yet. And so we should just make money as fast as we can until the damage is done and we know what it is. And we shouldn't worry about that because human beings are resilient. And so what his attitude is, we should just trash whatever we trash in whatever way we want to trash it, and leave for somebody else to pick it up. Which is, you know, that is kind of standard American business ethics, I suppose.
It has been.
It has been. And I've had economists explain to me that's standard business ethics. Yeah. If you want to do something about it, make a law.
There's a takeaway from this one. It's a quote. One long sentence, 2 sentences. This is these guys talking. We believe that a price on carbon should be a key element of these frameworks. These frameworks are the talks they're having.
Yep.
If governments act to price carbon, this discourages high carbon options and encourages the most efficient ways of reducing emissions widely.
Right.
Including reduced demand for the most carbon-intensive fossil fuels.
Which are? Coal.
Coal, and coal.
They want to have their product, unsurprisingly, displace coal because they don't have coal, and they do have a product that they can say, see, that makes less. And we will have more to say on that subject.
They're also talking about carbon capture, which the guy from Shell talked very heavily about.
Yeah, and which I think is a fraud.
It could very well be. It could very well be.
And
smart buildings, smart grids, off-grid access to energy, cleaner cars.
Yes, absolutely.
And new mobility business models and behaviors.
Yeah.
What that means, I don't quite know.
That means that people should change their behavior.
The way they're
reflect,
moving around. So mass transit instead of individual
absolutely.
cars. Okay,
and
that makes
by
sense.
the way, while we're doing this, let's think about new ways to frack the earth and make natural gas come to through pipelines in ways which emit huge amounts of methane, which is much worse than carbon dioxide, and we can blame coal for anything that goes wrong. I'm sorry, I'm making light of what these people did, and I shouldn't. Honestly, I should not do that. They've done something very important here by admitting that there's a problem, and the problem has to be dealt with.
Yeah, that's very. That's the bottom line right there.
Yeah, they are self-interested in the way they're doing this. They want a place at the table when the UN is and the countries are talking about what to do. But they are and they want to sell their own products. But they have made that admission, and having made that admission, the genie's out of the bottle, gang. Carbon emissions are driving climate change. 60% of the big oil companies have admitted it.
Yep, they're getting around to it. They have to.
Yeah.
They have to face up to it.
Should we talk about this for the next 25 minutes? Or
I guess we could.
On?
We're on Tuesday already, so.
Yeah. Okay. Ford Motor Company is joining Tesla Inc. and Toyota Motor Corp. in a strategy of letting competitors use patented technology to accelerate development of electric drive vehicles. Ford will open up hundreds of patents on electric car technology. However, unlike Tesla and Toyota, it will license its patents for a fee. This is from Automotive News. And it's good news. Could have been better. They could have said, okay, we're going to do what Tesla is doing and Toyota is copying Tesla. But, you know, if I were to buy a car right now, I think I'd buy a Tesla, not a Ford.
Well, I tell you, they're pretty nice cars.
They're pretty nice cars.
They're pretty damn nice cars.
And they're American made. Wow.
Huh?
And they're American made.
And they're American made.
Yeah.
Well, there's Ford's electric car up there.
Yeah, and maybe I'd buy one of those.
A neat little car.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's interesting. You know, we commented on something that led into that earlier. Okay, this is an interesting item.
Yeah.
All the electricity delivered to Borrego Springs, California during a nearly 9-hour period in May came from a nearby solar energy plant in what utility officials believe is the first time in the country an entire community has been powered by a renewable microgrid. San Diego Gas and Electric announced this, and this is from the Times of San Diego.
Well, it's interesting because this wasn't a trial or a pilot program. The grid was down.
Yeah.
And the grid was planned to be down. They had maintenance to do.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, we'll shut the grid down entirely, work on it, and we'll take care of Borrego Springs by the solar plant.
Yeah.
Which is nearby.
Yeah.
And large.
Yeah.
And it worked.
But they had this as a microgrid system, which meant that they had the equipment installed that would needed to regulate the grid and so forth from that solar, which I think must have included some sort of storage. I don't remember. I believe it did. Do you remember?
I don't recall the article mentioning storage.
Yeah, they must have if it was a microgrid, though. It would certainly.
But this kind of thing will be happening more and more because it just makes sense.
Yep.
Why should 10,000 people be out of power when maybe only 1,000 have to be?
Well, I don't know that anybody was out of power.
Well,
here.
the people elsewhere working on it, where they were working on the grid, were out of power.
Ah, I see. Okay.
It happened at Borrego Springs was properly situated to do this.
To deal with it. Okay. All right. That was from Times of San Diego. I guess I said that. From Renews, we got this item. U.S. developer Cape Wind has been granted a temporary reprieve while regulators mull a long-term extension request. Construction of the 468 megawatt project was to start by the 1st of May. The Massachusetts Energy Facilities Siting Board agreed to suspend the deadline while it considers a request for a 2-year extension. And by the way, they are extending that deadline for as long as they consider this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if it takes them 3 years to figure it out.
Well, part of the problem that was mentioned in the article there is the National Grid and their other utility, Eversource, backed out of the agreement to buy.
Right, and there is undoubtedly lawsuit going on over that. I know that the Cape Wind people said that was in violation of their contract.
Well, they'll work it out.
They'll work it out.
It's going to happen, I think.
They've got, the Cape Wind has got siting permissions for this, and it's got leases for it, and it's got a whole bunch of work
they've already started building
done.
the infrastructure on the land.
That's right, and that was being done at the expense, to some degree, of the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So there are strong reasons to think that regardless of what happens between Cape Wind and National Grid, and who was the other one?
Eversource.
This project is probably going to be brought to fruition by somebody.
I think Eversource is a new name for an old company. I think it was.
I remember. Yes, I don't remember what the company was.
Northeast Utilities, I think it was.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but the picture up there is interesting. We've showed it before. It is not a picture of Cape Wind, and if I blew the picture up, you'd see the boat there.
Yeah.
It says Cape Wind Eco Tours.
Yes.
So it was a neat little thing they threw in there.
Yeah. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, June 3rd, and this next item that we have is, every once in a while I put something in just because I think it's beautiful. And I think this is beautiful.
This was neat. I'll bring it right up.
And I'm just going to read what it says. This is from Today Online. Lights flick across a sleepy hamlet in Kenya thanks to efforts. Lights flick on across a sleepy hamlet in Kenya thanks to efforts of more than 200 Maasai women at the front line of the solar power revolution. Trained in solar panel installation, they use donkeys to haul their solar wares from home to home in a remote region, giving their families their first access to clean and reliable power.
This is a very interesting project.
Yes,
First of all, the women over there are kind of underemployed. You know, they've been traditionally held down. They train these women. Now, these women aren't walking up on people's roofs installing solar panels. As you see there, they don't have much in the way of roofs.
That's right.
But what they're doing is they're individual entrepreneurs buying and selling solar panel components, small solar panel components, putting them together for individual homes, so that they got enough solar power to run a light, maybe a television set, and maybe a heater for hot water. Oh. You know, they're small, but they've had nothing like that at all here.
Well,
there hasn't been any electricity in these villages at all before.
Right, and they're
empowering the women.
They're not only is it empowering women, but I think that it's interesting that they're able to take people who are not merely off the grid. They're way off the grid. You know, it would cost millions of dollars, possibly hundreds of millions of dollars, to get transmission lines to all these villages. Which
it wouldn't do it.
They would never do it.
It would never pay.
You're going to spend $100,000 getting a line from the nearest big transmission line to a little village where the people will buy $14 worth of electricity a week.
Yeah.
And it just
so
doesn't
now
make
you got
sense.
about 2,000 households, according to this article,
that
have adopted solar technology. And as I said, they're small.
They're small.
But their needs are small.
What
were they using before? They were hiking 14 miles to get a can of kerosene.
Right. And what happens now is that as their needs increase, they can increase their production by adding more solar. It's a very simple system.
It's very scalable.
Yep, very scalable, and this is happening all over the world, except a few places where a lot of people already have electricity.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll read a quick takeaway from one of the women here. For us, the impact of solar technology is unparalleled, said Jacqueline Naiputa, who heads the Osopuco something else group, one of the 5 women's groups leading the alternative energy charge in the area.
Yeah.
Renewable energy developer Green Energy Africa provides the group with solar products, including panels, lights, small rechargeable batteries at a discount. The women sell the products at a profit of around $3 each, which goes into the group's bank account to buy more stock. So it's, by stock, I don't think they mean...
Don't you love this? They're talking about more solar panels.
Yeah, that's what
maybe
they
a
mean
new
here.
donkey.
But
come to think of it, donkeys are renewable, aren't they?
I think so, yeah.
In fact, automatically renewable.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Wow.
So this, this is small, but it's certainly, in its way, earth-shattering.
It is.
Because they're breaking a lot of taboos here.
And they're empowering a lot of people.
Bingo.
Bingo. Thousands and thousands, millions of people in Africa can get electric power this way, and it can change their lives completely because their children can learn from books under electric lights instead of kerosene. They don't have to kill themselves with bad atmospheric conditions to get an education. And the WHO says that 7 million people die each year because of air pollution, but approximately half of that is because of pollution that is inside the home.
And in third world countries, that's very common.
Very
they don't even
common.
have chimneys sometimes.
Yep. So this is a very important development. Okay, Want China Times. It's all one word. I don't know how they do that. China says China is the world's largest hydropower producer and is expected to share its technology with the world despite challenges at home, according to the China Economic Weekly. China's installed hydropower capacity of 300 gigawatts, oh man, led the world and accounted for 27% of global capacity in 2014.
Well, China has some very large hydro installations.
Very big, yeah.
This with Three Gorges Dam, where it's in the news now because it just had a marine disaster.
Yes.
A ship sank with a whole bunch of people
Right.
on board. And what were they doing there? They were going there to view this Three Gorges Dam, which
I didn't know that.
Which is something to view in China. It's sort of, I guess, like going to Niagara Falls.
Wow. I did not know that.
This picture here is not in China, it's in Ecuador. But besides building dams at home, the Chinese are exporting their technology because they know how to do it.
This is what they're exporting, is the technology for building the dams and the turbines and the generators and so forth. And basically, this is not rocket science, but it is when you think about wind power technology, you can see that GE has increased the output of wind turbines repeatedly by just changing the software of the controlling systems, and they've managed to get wind turbines operating at above 50% capacity, which is really kind of amazing when you think about it, because 3 years ago they were operating at less than 40%. So this is a very significant thing. And they can do that with wind turbines that are already up.
They probably can do some things like that.
Like that.
The hydro.
That's right.
But the basic hydro structure that you're looking at there, the dam and all that, that's old technology.
That's old technology.
They were building them in New York State in 1910.
Yes, that's right. And, this is stuff that we're pretty much used to. I think that there are people in other parts of the world who are much less used to it than we are. Okay, this is one of those delightful pieces that comes up every once in a while. And I'm sure there's going to be commentary about it. Huffington Post tells us Republican presidential hopeful Rick Santorum says he loves the Pope. He loves Pope Francis, but he wants the pontiff to stop talking about climate change. He says the Pope should, quote, leave science to the scientists, end quote. The Pope, who has a master's degree in chemistry, is becoming increasingly vocal about climate change. The Pope, it turns out, is a bit of a scientist. Rick Santorum, however, is not. And he is not leaving science to the scientists, plural. He's leaving science to the captive scientists that somebody hired to tell him that climate change isn't happening. And you know,
well, he's saying this out of his particular version, I think, of Catholicism.
yes,
And he believes in it.
yes.
And according to him, global warming can't be. God wouldn't do something like that to us.
Oh, I see. Yeah, and God wouldn't have brought us the bubonic plague either.
Yeah, yeah.
That was brought by somebody else. Oh.
Santorum, this is a takeaway from the article. Santorum has also rejected evolution.
Yes, well.
And instead believes in intelligent design. Well, a lot of people do.
Intelligent design doesn't exclude evolution.
No, it doesn't really. No. But Pope Francis says evolution does not contradict church doctrine.
Right.
So they both have a different slant on.
I think that Rick Santorum has been going to a church that he thought was Catholic, but in fact was something else.
Well, I got a lot of relatives that are Catholics.
No.
And most of them belong to what I call a sect within the Catholic Church.
I've known a few people who
and
do that.
It's called Latin Mass Catholics.
Okay.
And they reject Pope John the 23rd and anything that he said and anything that has come out from them. They think that he wasn't valid.
Really?
And they, my nephew drives 50 miles on Sunday to go to Mass where they speak it in Latin.
Wow.
And he didn't grow up in a Latin Mass church. It was already English as he was a kid.
Well, you know, the churches are funny things. And all religion in general is funny things. I knew a man once, I didn't know him well, who was a Roman Catholic priest and a practicing Orthodox Jew.
Well, I think that's possible. I mean,
He thought it was possible.
Yeah, I think, you know, you
I'm
have
sorry,
to get,
I was wrong.
get over.
He wasn't an Orthodox Jew, he was a conservative Jew.
Conservative Jew.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's rare, but you know.
It's rare, but you know, there's the Messianic Jewish religion in which you've got people who are practicing Judaism, very clearly Judaism, but when they go to the synagogue and read the scripture, they read, among other things, from the New Testament.
Christian scriptures.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who was one of them.
You know, I read a thing by a rabbi who was talking about the doctrine of the Trinity and how this was in the Old Testament, which he referred to as the Old Testament. And, you know, I'm not saying that all Jews should do this by any stretch of the imagination, or even that, I mean, I've known Jews who I talked to about, they said, no, those people are not Jewish.
Well, I had a friend was a member of a group in New York called Jews for Jesus.
Yes, that's part of the Messianic Jews.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were.
Yeah, yeah. And they've been around for a long time. Okay, I think we're off energy and we should get back to it. We've got one more item.
Yeah, this
here.
is the last item. So,
natural gas intelligence, and the idea of combining gas and intelligence just strikes me as being weird. But
well, you must have a different one than I have. I'm talking about California snowpack.
California snowpack. Yes, that's what I'm reading about. This
Okay.
is from Natural Gas Intelligence.
Oh, there it is. Natural. Okay.
See?
Yep.
I'm wrong sometimes, but every once in a while I'm right.
We're on the same page.
Yep. A new low in California's worsening drought was reached Monday when state officials reported that the state snowpack is gone.
There's a picture of it up there.
Ugh.
That was taken in March.
Yeah.
So right now there's nothing left.
Yep.
There's no white on those hills.
This was inevitable as a measurement 2 months ago when it was 5%. 5% of normal. That's the amount of water they've got to refill the reservoirs. Clearly,
it's gone already.
Yeah, clearly, if the whole problem with the drought could have been circumvented if environmentalists had just allowed them to build more dams.
Doggone those environmentalists, you know.
Well, you know, we're making jokes about Carly Fiorina.
Normally, that picture there of the Sierra Nevada would have been in March, all
Right.
white.
Nancy Ray Mallory, who's the editor of Green Energy Times, has a son who, up until very recently, lived in the Sierra Nevadas, and I think it was last year, in January or February, he was talking to her on the phone, and he said, "We don't have any snow on the ground," And so the ground in the Sierra Nevadas was bare at a time when it usually had more than 10 or 12 or 15
Yeah, I was going to say
feet
about 12 feet
of snow. And these people have got houses that are built to exist under snowbanks.
Yeah.
But his house was sitting on cold, frozen ground, which is really kind of new to him. And this is what's happening.
Well, one of the major ski areas out there had to close at the end of March. They're usually open almost until the 4th of July.
You know, I remember we had a very snowy winter, and this was over 30 years ago. But we had a very snowy winter in New England, and I remember a TV announcer saying, "You think we had snow here? You should see what's going on in the Sierra Nevadas." And they showed pictures of houses where the only thing you could see was a little bit of the chimney appearing above a snowbank.
Uh-huh.
And he said these people have got, I don't remember, 20 feet of snow, and the prediction was that that snow would persist on the ground in the Sierra Nevadas until August. And,
okay, yeah.
And yeah, and
it was like a week short of year round.
Yeah, and it was a very long, persistent, and snowpack, and of course it didn't last until August because they had heat waves, and so there was severe flooding that year in places in the West because the snow was just melting in the mountains faster than it normally would. However, it tells you something about what normal is, and normal is they would have feet of snow on the 1st of June in several feet, many feet, I don't know, in the Sierra Nevadas, and there isn't any. And there hasn't been for some time. However, one thing about this, and it says this in the article, is that despite the problems with the water supply, they will have enough power in California to run their air conditioners.
I remember that, which
Comes
it's already there.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming from other sources, mostly natural gas.
Well, actually, they're getting more and more and more of it, a larger and larger percentage of it from wind and solar. And the wind and the solar is being put up much faster than the natural gas is. They
can do it quicker.
They can do it quicker. Yeah. If you want to put in a natural gas plant, you have to plan it. You have to bring it to the town, to the county, to the state, to the, and you've got to get all kinds of permissions, and you do that for
just the process
for wind.
Of building is going to take 3 years.
For wind and solar, you have to get permissions too, but the wind and solar permissions are really small by comparison with the huge natural gas thing, and you might even have to change the transmission lines to deal with natural gas, and because the plants are big, and it takes years and years to get them online. As you said, 3 years to build them. It's not as lengthy a time as nuclear, obviously, but nevertheless, it's a long time to get those things going, and you can get solar and wind in much faster. And in the last couple of years, they've put a lot in California, a lot. So I think that's the end of our news.
Well, it is.
And I think somebody is coming in.
Somebody sounds like they're coming in.
Come in. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
We have a guest who is appearing to fill our empty chair.
Come in and the mystery guest has appeared. How you doing, guy?
I'm George Harvey.
Hi, George.
And you are?
Chris Martinson.
Chris Martinson. Yes, you've got it. Chris is going to be our guest on the next segment of this show, which normally when we have guests, that appears on Channel 8. So those of you who would like to hear what Chris Martinson is going to say, which tells us about economics.
Among other things.
Among many things.
Okay, so join us and get educated. Okay.
I want to point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I want to hope gentle rains can fall upon the land so lovely earth can stay lovely still.